One of the people leading the charge in combating hate crimes from our community to Lansing is Representative Noah Arbit, who hosted a town hall addressing hate crimes and extremism recently right here in Greater West Bloomfield. Representative Arbit is with us on the Splash Live to talk about that even more. Mr. Arbit, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on. In retrospect, thinking about this event that you put on with Attorney General Dana Nessel and a nationwide expert from an organization called Peril to address hate crimes and extremism from our community and outward. This is not something that just popped up recently and happened here in Greater West Bloomfield. It's something that your camp had been planning for quite a while. So what sparked your office and you personally wanting to have a community-wide discussion on this issue?
Yeah, sure. So, this is something taking on rising hate crimes and addressing Michigan's woefully inadequate hate crimes laws. So those were things that I campaigned on back when I was first running for this office 4 years ago almost, which is crazy to say. And so, now that I'm in my second term and the legislation has passed, the legislation that I sponsored, the Michigan Hate Crime Act and the Institutional Desecration Act, we got those bills signed into law. It was important for me to both educate the public on those bills and also, some proactive steps that people can take in their own small ways to sort of arrest these trends and fight back against hate, against radicalization, against extremism and polarization. All of these sort of forces that I think really tear us apart and threaten the integrity of our society and the resilience of our society, and in particular focus on our youth. And so connecting with the Attorney General as well as with the Peril team, Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris, who's a nationwide expert, researcher, and has a best-selling author, has written books called Hate in the Homeland and Man Up. Definitely recommend everyone read those books. I think it was just a really important way for us to get the message out and to let people know that, just because, these things exist does not mean that there aren't ways that we can make them better and really take action against hate and against extremism. So that was the sort of motivation for why I wanted to host this town hall.
And you grew up in this community you're very familiar with. One of the key elements of Greater West Bloomfield that makes it such a strong community and a place where a lot of people come to from all over the world is the fact that it has such a diverse population of different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And that makes it all the more important, I would imagine, to have these sorts of conversations sparked from in our community, because while a lot of the discussion at this event sort of drew back to anti-Semitism, that's not the only form of hate that people in our communities have seen or will see in the future. So from a diversity standpoint, given the population of our community, why is it even that much more important to begin to have this dialogue here in Greater West Bloomfield and move that beyond our community to our neighbors and throughout the state?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Obviously I'm Jewish, and, coming from that background, anti-Semitism is something that, keeps me awake at night, frankly. And, having received, threats and, been involved in, just some really heinous things in terms of threats that have come my way as a Jewish elected official. But understanding, of course, that, that there's anti-Black racism, there's Islamophobia, there's anti-Asian racism, homophobia. The rest of it is so incredibly important to understand, and that's why I talked a lot about how the legislation that I introduced isn't for one community, but it's to protect all communities, and also to understand too, like I can't pass a bill that's going to end anti-Semitism or anti-Black racism or Islamophobia or homophobia, but what we can do is equip Michigan with the tools to respond, to prevent violence, prevent targeted violence, and also equip communities to be able to respond and actually take action to prevent these types of ills, these types of societal ills from infecting communities in the first place. And that's the resources that Peril, the Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab, really brings to the table. And that's why I was really gratified that we were able to have Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris there to talk about Peril's work and to share with members of our community those resources that they can access for free online, as well as partnering with West Bloomfield School District in Peril on some K-5 curriculum that really gets to the heart at ensuring that young students have the ability to go online and find out, figure out what is propaganda and what is meant to be misinformation and what's not. Equipping them with those tools to understand what's real and what's not online, I think, is really, really critical.
And especially today, where we're being so flooded through social media, through traditional media also, and through word of mouth, with such a bevy of different information. Some of it that's accurate and full, some of it that's full misinformation, and a lot that's in between. Sort of seeing those triggers and those risk factors that lead to hate speech manifesting in the community was a really big point that particularly Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris from Peril had brought up during that conversation.
That's right. Well, and I think it's important to remember too, and we had a pamphlet that sort of listed out a glossary of terms. It's important to understand hate speech is not illegal. Hate speech is deleterious to society for sure, but is not illegal. What the difference between hate speech and a hate crime is that a hate crime is an actual criminal act that is targeted because of someone's race, religion, sex. And we talk a lot about gender-based violence. Domestic violence, violence perpetrated largely against women. Those things can be hate crimes too. But hate speech by itself, we have the First Amendment in this country. We respect the freedom of speech. Even the most heinous hate speech is protected by the Constitution. So that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about actual acts of targeted violence or threatened acts of targeted violence that are really experienced collectively by a community. I mean, I talked a lot about how in 2018, the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting that was the most deadly attack on the Jewish community in American history, really impacted me. Even though I'm not from Pittsburgh, I'm not part of the community. The communities that I'm part of weren't necessarily threatened, but this is experienced collectively. And so the people who are part of the victims' community are really impacted too, and can be traumatized. And that's something that people who commit hate crimes count on. They understand that their actions reverberate across a wider population, and they're counting on it.
And it's important, too, for people to understand that there is action they can take here in the state of Michigan. Attorney General Dana Nessel providing a lot of clarity on how people can report hate crimes if they fall victim to it, if they witness those hate crimes. Because that, as you said, that's the important point of this, is the hate speech isn't it's at the crux of the issue, but it's not particularly where the law veers from legal to illegal. It happens through action. So you can see the full.
I think talking about hate speech is important because hate speech often begets hate action, which if we're talking about hate crimes, but by itself is not something that's criminalized.
Exactly, and you can view the full Hate Crimes and Extremism Town Hall that we broadcast live here on Civic Center TV. It's available on demand on civiccentertv.com. You can also find it on our Facebook page at Civic Center TV 15, as well as on Representative Arbit's Facebook page as well. A lot of really good insight in there, a lot of clarity into some of what we've been hearing on the new anti-hate crime legislation that was passed through Representative Arbit and the state Congress over the past year, and so much more. Plus, a lot of really interesting insight from an expert, Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris from Peril through American University during that entire conversation. And Representative Noah Arbit is with us, representing our local area in the 20th District in the Michigan House of Representatives. As we talk about hate crimes and we talk about the anti-hate crime legislation, a big part of what went into the town hall was discussions on addressing it in your community and in your social circles. And a big part of that was not just only recognizing what is hate speech, what are hate crimes, kind of how they manifest and how they relate to one another, but how to react and to be proactive also beyond that, Noah. What was really important that was discussed from Attorney General Dana Nessel was talking about the hate speech that you experience in your day-to-day, having those conversations with people that may have a misguided point of view on a certain group of people that can be mitigated by simply having a conversation, having a healthy and friendly debate to move from hate to some sort of understanding. That's something also that I know your office has been emphasizing too through all of this, as well as you've put forth these efforts to curb hate crimes in Greater West Bloomfield and beyond. How would you encourage people in a diverse community like Greater West Bloomfield to branch out maybe beyond their subset of the community to get to know other people and maybe dispel some of those misconceptions they have about people of different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think this is a really incredible point, and we actually have really incredible opportunities here in Greater West Bloomfield to do just that. I think education is really often always the key. Education and proximity to different communities, and so pop over to the when it opens at the corners, the new Chaldean Heritage Museum, the first in the world Chaldean Heritage Museum that's going to be in West Bloomfield. Go and visit the Ziegelman Holocaust Center in Farmington Hills, right? Like, acquaint yourself, educate yourself, and sort of immerse yourself in other people's cultures. I think proximity and understanding and education, I think often is really the key to demystifying and really to guarding against hate, because we hate the things that we are unfamiliar with, right? And once something becomes familiar, our brains are really designed to protect us from the unfamiliar. And so when you look at like what is underlying a lot of hate, oftentimes it's just people who are unfamiliar with certain things, and so they assume it's bad, and that's just a very base like human tendency. And so proximity, familiarity, education, all of those things I think are really important. And I think it's also why like when we went to school at Lone Pine, Tyler, you'll remember we had Traditions Near and Far night, which was really kind of like an international fest where all the kids' parents who were maybe from a different country came, and that exposed us to different cultures and different foods and different ways of living. And I think that was just such an important bedrock for us. And like now it gets talked about and politically it's like, oh, that's DEI. Like, no, that's just education. That's just learning about your neighbors, right? And so I just think that so often we politicize these things, and really it's just about getting to know your neighbors, and it's just about expanding your horizons and understanding how other people live, and why is that a bad thing?
In a community like Greater West Bloomfield, where we have so many different diverse backgrounds, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, and so on and so forth, we have a great opportunity to do that. And a big part of, and a really interesting way that you can get involved in and getting to know people of different backgrounds is to simply just get involved in the community.
That's right.
Too.
We can lead the way here in West Bloomfield.
Absolutely. Representative, we only have a couple more minutes with you. I want to give you one last chance to say anything else that we haven't been able to discuss today, and your final thoughts as people maybe look back on the Hate Crimes and Extremism Town Hall and take away something that they can apply into their own lives to help make a friendlier community here and beyond.
First of all, I want to thank you for being there, for broadcasting it, and I just want to encourage everyone to go, if you weren't able to be there, to go and watch it. I think there's a lot of really interesting and educational and informative tidbits on there. And also, I would encourage you to talk with your school districts, especially if you're a parent, and ask them what they are doing, and if there's any way that they can bring in some of this programming that Peril offers to really make our kids in our community more resilient against hate, against extremism, and against misinformation and disinformation in particular. We talk a lot about online safety and about how oftentimes online misinformation and disinformation can be a really nasty vector of radicalization and extremism, and parents often don't know about it, and teachers don't often know about it until it's too late. And so if we're going to arrest those disturbing trends, not just in our community but across the state, it really is incumbent upon schools to be leaders in that effort, and for parents to put the onus on schools to do that. So I'm happy to have conversations with anyone in our community, with my constituents, to connect you with those resources. You can contact my office. You can go to reparbit.com or email me at noaharbit@house.mi.gov. And I'm really looking forward to continuing these conversations and continuing the advocacy work against hate and against extremism.
Rep Noah Arbit, reparbit.com is his website. Rep Noah Arbit is his handle on Facebook for more information and to follow along other events and appearances that will be happening right here in our community. Once again, you can view the full Hate Crimes and Extremism Town Hall with Representative Noah Arbit, Attorney General Dana Nessel, and Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris from Peril at American University on demand, civiccentertv.com, and across our social media. Representative Arbit, thank you so much for your time.
For having me, Tyler.